All right. Why don't you, introduce yourself and in the position you have or business you run?
Tony DiSanza. I am the Chief Operating Officer for a company called Cooperdine Tech, which is uh, a home-based business.
Hmm.
I have several clients that really are where I'm doing the work. I'm a Chief Revenue Officer for an IT staffing firm called Sansar Tech. I'm spending about 70 to 80% of my time on that. In addition, I'm Chief Revenue Officer for a company called SimpleAI.ai. It's a agentic AI platform. So it's really more on the product marketing, product sales type of structure. We literally just went live, uh, went commercial just last week. I've been working with them, and we're a pre-seed organization. And then third, I'm doing some advising to several other companies as far as growing their business here in the United States.
Nice. And so how would you describe what you do?
It's a number of things, right? Senior leadership. I have started businesses in the past and grown them to, 10,
Mm,
$15 million, a couple of entrepreneurial things. Plus, I've also worked for some of the largest companies, SI consultancies, Accenture, IBM,
mm,
Cognizant. And why that's important is as we look at, in my career, I've worked with products that were coming to market or very nascent. PeopleSoft 3, Oracle Cloud,
mm,
Workday, Salesforce, early on in the products. And, what that's done is, this is from an IT implementer perspective, is figuring out how you work with them, how you basically communicate value of why use it. So I think a lot of times people say, well, here's a technology, let's find a problem, versus let's hear what the business problem is and let's figure out what the entire universe's technology can best solve it.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
In fact,
nice.
I just had a conversation about that today.
And so what's been the biggest challenge you faced when trying to scale a business? And how did you
Um,
overcome it?
there's really, and then there are terms land and expand, right?
Hmm.
Versus hunter. And, I think that it really does take a specific personality to be a hunter, which is a totally different type of personality and type of fortitude than a farmer.
Hmm.
Okay. And scaling up isn't just, um, building on relationships. It's building value and demonstrating differentiation across the product scheme. And when I say that is, again, as somebody that's, implemented PeopleSoft for 10 to 20 years, probably more like 20, um, and then moved to Oracle Cloud and or Workday, you compare those things, you know, demonstrating this new product can be better than what the customer has and
Hmm.
can drive value. Scaling up can be tough. The usual comments are, where have you done this before? Where has this been implemented
Hmm.
before? Especially when you're moving in a new market. So the biggest help is having those innovators, those people that are willing to be on the bleeding edge and work with you. Like I said, Oracle Cloud. I mean, we were literally, the client I had was literally building it. Um, when I was working with them, it was alpha. PeopleSoft Campus Solutions. I worked at, one of the universities where we were building it. Okay, and that's the same case with, other products, building new solutions. In the last few years, Salesforce Nonprofit Cloud, be an example. I'm working for a company that built a solution to basically provide functionality that didn't exist.
Mm.
So you got to have customers that are willing to take chances, that have a vision, and realize sometimes it's about taking on something new. And by that, people will see the success. I mean, what you want to do is you want to have real, and then I could talk about key success factors, but
Hmm.
and then people will follow on with that with a good story.
Got it. Cool. And then can you share a time when you tried a strategy that completely failed and trying to scale?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna name the product,
Mhm.
but let's put it this way. In 2008, I had a choice between getting involved with Workday or getting involved with another product that was open source ERP, and it was focused for a specific industry. And I chose that because it was the industry I had been spending 15 years on. The product still exists, but it's a very niche product. Okay.
Mhm.
When you looked at it, there were a lot of universities wanting to adopt it because, uh, being open source, you minimize license fees, and
Mhm.
you have a cooperative development effort. Downside is that if you don't put the right organization to manage the product, it goes nowhere, and we missed a lot of rollout
Mm.
schedule.
And then what's one thing you wish you had done differently earlier in the scaling journey?
I think there's two things. It's,
Mhm.
when you scale, there are a lot of ways to do it. And, a lot of what I say is mostly around scaling an IT services firm. And what I mean by that is there's really two structures, a delivery based and a sales based. Sales based means going out, building on your relationships with people. They say, I need you to do this, and then you find the people to do that, right? The other way is, you work with a team of people that know how to deliver, but don't have, subsequent jobs, and then you got to find sales. I think the people that usually are the delivery based are the most successful because you can reproduce the quality and you can deliver really good quality by going out and selling and then really not hiring the right people to deliver is going to set you back some. So, the strategy, the structure is really having the best people to deliver.
Got it. And then as your business grew, what was some of the hardest things about shifting from a small team to a bigger team, or that you see with the businesses you scale?
Yeah, no, excellent, excellent point. And I think really it comes down to is, um, you have direct costs and then you have SG&A, sales, um, what is it? SG&A, administrative costs.
Uh-huh.
And so investing in administrative activities, in administrative resources, because that really does take away the profit that you could use to sink into R&D
Hmm.
or people that can deliver. It's a matter of, and I think now versus then, you have a lot more flexibility with fractional roles.
Hmm.
So you don't need to hire a full-time HR person, for
Right.
example, for 75 or $150,000. You can buy those resources or use it as a service. And then that money that you have can be reinvested into the delivery.
Yeah,
I think
fractionals. Oh, go ahead.
No, I think really it's always focusing on your core um, asset, which
Hmm.
is, whether it's the product or the resource,
Hmm.
those assets.
Yeah, I find
Marketing. Go ahead.
Uh-huh. Oh, I say I find fractional or just from the gig economies really help shift how a business can scale itself as you don't need to hire that guy for 250 to sit there, every day. And, maybe he's got enough to do, but it's not really providing all the value it could to the company at the level it's at. So being able to have those experts come in for periods of time to help set direction, then have the team execute, then bring them back to hold accountability that seems to be a big thing I see as far as success from companies being able to execute on now.
And that's also helped me too
Hmm.
do the role is that realize you don't need to, when you're getting paid for 40 hours a week, you need to justify your work, right?
Yeah.
And especially at the executive level, if you're not finding, so fundamentally it's find those deals,
Hmm.
build the pipeline, build a top of funnel. But while you're doing that, you may need to wait, right? But
Yep.
when you're fractional, you don't charge that. You can split your time off.
Yeah, I
So
enjoy it because I'm like, here's your marching orders. Here's the data I need to be able to measure the success, and here's the data, the waypoints you need to hit. And then we had the meeting, like, well, you're not hitting those waypoints. Like, what do you want me to do? And then they're hitting the waypoints. It's like, okay, time for next phase. So I
Yes.
enjoy it because I'm in and out, and I like working with a lot of different companies, and I see the benefit that they have to them because they get the leadership, and they can call you anytime for the most part.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. What's a common misconception about scaling businesses you've learned?
Common misconception. That's a really good question. I don't know if I could really answer that. Um,
Like people have this idea that they think things are going to be a certain way, and it never is. Like
oh yeah.
it's
Okay.
never
I
easy
got it.
to just like turn a dial and things go up. Maybe on some advertising where you put more money into it, but in general, it's like, oh, we just need to hire one more person, and you're like, wow, it takes a lot to hire people and keep people and hire the right people.
Um, I'll tell you a couple of different things. Is like anybody, especially in the IT consulting firm world or
Hmm.
ecosystem, and or even staffing too, which is that you think you hang out your shingle and somebody immediately is going to want to buy from you. Okay. So the common misconception is if you don't have a really good story to tell, or if you don't have a really good case study or two or three, or if you don't have good customers that'll serve as references for you, just by opening up a shingle, because you have low barrier to entry, doesn't mean that you're going to grow and scale immediately. I mean, that's a lot.
Hmm.
There's a lot to goes into starting, entering a new market or scaling altogether.
Yeah, for sure. We see it. Like people, our thing is that, or what I see is in general with a lot of people work at, if we're taking a smaller business to a large, trying to grow them, is that they'll think that the amount of people or the amount of time required to do certain things doesn't exist. Like they think, oh, I've been running this campaign and just fine. So just, make that bigger. And you're like, no, you got to revamp your whole email system. You got to do these drip campaigns. Like there's a million different things that you're not even aware of. But because you've gotten to this level of success, you're essentially holding yourself back because you don't want to put the team in place to grow the company to get it where it needs to be. Um, so
Uh,
it's
and and
uh,
what and the other part of that too is, you get so many of these get rich quick schemes come through on LinkedIn messaging or YouTube, right? The big one is AI. I mean, if you look on YouTube now about you can start your own AI business, uh, consulting business
mhm.
and grow it to $1 million. It's like, no, no, not that easy.
What
Okay.
was it? Amazon drop shipping. That was the $1 billion business. Or it started with like SEO, then it was paid ads, then it was drop shipping, and then everyone could do drop shipping, everyone could do Shopify. Now it's yeah, these AI businesses. You're like, you guys even understand how fast this is going or how even this works? Like it's not just but I mean it's good. These kids are making a lot of money and I see a lot of kids, they're pivoting to being these consultants with zero experience in growing businesses and they have I don't know how they get all these income statements to show revenue. Maybe they make them up, but it's like, look at me on my Lamborghini and I've made all this money sitting at home. You're like, okay.
There's probably a lot of that, and I know with social media marketing
Hmm.
and influencers, it could be done, if you have that
Can be done,
small,
yeah.
you can do that, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're charging a small amount, something that people look at, that subscription model that is $10 or so, that, once you sign up, you forget about it,
Hmm.
and, you got all this, revenue stream of people paying you, but really not deriving any value. That's not the real business. And
Right.
especially when you're talking about scaling to the enterprise. See, I've only been really B2B.
Hmm.
A lot of that is B2C, which,
Yep.
people have a little bit more discretion. It says I could spend $10, I could spend $40, something like that. But even, even $100 a year, like Instacart, I just got charged and I forgot to
Yep.
cancel my membership.
I love subscription-based models. I always try and
Yeah.
figure out for business how you can generate revenue that way because people forget you may get three or four more payments out of them depending on what your service or product is. So that lifetime value grows and, just compounds.
I was with a company where, speaking of subscription, we had a uh, customer support or managed service subscription model, right? Where the problem though was we were charging 10 to 20,000 a year, right? And for the most part, the type of customers we were targeting, they could afford it. But unfortunately, the real customers that really could use it
Mm,
could maybe only afford like even less of a subscription. Really, it's more of a, per use model where it's, they should be subscribing to Upwork,
Hmm.
and spend 150 on, today and maybe come back in 3 months and figure out what else they need. Um, so, pricing it works as long as you know who you're pricing it to.
Sure. Yeah, you always need to know who your customer is or client. Um, right now, how are you building your sales pipeline and generating leads?
Oh God, it's in a way it's omni-channel, but it's a
Hmm.
lot of digital marketing, right? So it's relationship based first
Hmm.
and foremost. Contacts that I've been building. Two, it's content marketing, so that you're establishing the brand as something that's not selling, but as a thought leader in the market.
Yeah.
Um, I'm doing a lot. We're doing a lot of that with the AI product that we have, because at the end of the day, it's like, who's buying this? The buyer is the IT buyer, and they need to know, can this work? Is this
Hmm.
viable? Don't just tell me, show me, right?
Are you doing demos?
Yeah, doing
Yeah.
demos, webinars, different things like that. So, that's the real thing. Talking doesn't play, in the product side. In the consulting side, speaking does, because what you're doing is you're elucidating your knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And
Authority expert. Yeah.
exactly. So when a buyer wants to know, can you implement this product or do this? You got to be able to come with goods, come with a story. Where have you done it before? And these are the people that are going to be working for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That social, the authority expert, social proof, and then like you said earlier, case studies, client testimonials, clients who will get on the phone with people and vet for you.
yeah,
It adds up. But building that initial pipeline, that could always be the tough part because I feel once that's in place, like that other stuff will kind of fall behind it. But getting
yes,
that
agreed.
initial process for predictable leads is where everything can be difficult because there's so many channels to go through and so many ways to do it, and then some work, and then you got to test it and just knowing all the different tools to use and how to do it. But one thing I think I find, especially for like I mean, all service-based business for the most part is building relationships and business development who need consistently outside of like maybe a dentist office and a doctor, but they could do it too, right? Like, a personal injury attorney, I always have business development, go out, form relationships with doctors, chiropractors, anywhere you can get in that you could build that so you're first of mind when something happens. Even other attorneys, don't folk maybe they do criminal and they deal with someone where accidents happen.
And you look at, I give you several different examples, right? On
Hmm.
the IT staffing business, the two parts are who is hiring, and you're, in a way, you're a matchmaker, and you got to find the right resources that are willing to be in the market. They may not be in the market today, but maybe they need something, or maybe they find a real good opportunity. And there's where the networking comes in versus just posting a job ad.
Hmm.
So I participate in several user groups, and I won't go into, level of detail in the technologies, but different technologies and different localities, so that this way, if somebody is in the market, it's no different than a realtor looking,
Hmm.
and talking to people about, okay, when you're ready to sell, think of me, right? And it's when you're ready to do something, think of me, right?
Yeah.
Or the other way is, hey, by the way, I'm looking for a .NET developer. Do you know anybody that's in the market? And then they say, yeah, I got somebody for you.
Hmm.
And I did that yesterday. A friend of mine just left their company, and, you know, I reached out to another friend that I was just, talking with. I said, this person could use a job, and I endorsed them. So my hope is that they'll, follow through.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's different because you can also with the business plant seeds way earlier than as a realtor. Realtor is just like, hey, if you know when you're ready. But we could be like, hey, you want me to take a quick look, and then I could help, do like a quick assessment, be like, hey, maybe these are some ideas that you can do. And then you start connecting all the dots with the people and referrals and it kind of
Yeah.
keeps that community together of businesses who you can trust, right? Because it comes down to like I work with a lot like developers. I've worked with a lot, and there's only one I've come down to over the years I've actually been able to trust. And it's, depending on the niche, right? Who you can get and be like, okay, I'm gonna use you as a reference because I trust you. So it takes time to even get to that point because sometimes things go sideways when you're like, this is not what you said you were going to do. But cool. And then, what advice do you have for small or medium business who are looking to scale?
It depends on what stage you are in when you say
Hmm.
small and medium business. Okay, obviously small, and I'm seeing this and comparing and contrasting, Simple AI that's pre-seed, that needs an angel investor
Hmm.
versus, some that have already gotten Series A, for example, which are two different things. And you say, okay, once you get Series A, once you get some of that initial funding, part of it is don't waste it. Do the right things with it,
Mm.
right? I remember 20 years ago at the beginning of the dot com boom evolution when we were getting seed funding, funding, and you'd go and rent this beautiful, office space, and
Hmm.
you don't have the income stream coming in. You just had asset, there. So I did that with two other companies, and this goes back to again what I said earlier. I mean, 15 years ago, starting a company and scaling, I got them up to 10 million. And what we should have been doing is distributing the profit to the partners.
Mm.
We cleared a couple of million a year after year. What we did instead was we bought or we decided to employ additional resources. I'd say,
Hmm.
look, live hungry and work hungry for a long time, meaning you could still work out of each other's home office unless,
Yeah.
and invest in productivity tools instead of getting an office, for example. Those fixed lease and long-term commitments you have with a resource,
Hmm.
that's a lot more costly than, you know, 10 copies of Google Workspace, for example, and Microsoft Teams subscription.
But that used to be the thing. I remember, like, if you didn't have, because I grew up in the San Francisco Bay, if you didn't have a spot in the city, south of Market where everything was booming, then they're like, well, we don't feel credible. And you're like, but what? You just wasted all this money on these. I mean, it was nice because
Yeah.
that part of the city got nicer, and then it started branching out. Where now we're at, it's not a big of a deal. But like these companies they feel more international now. Feel they need to be in these hubs, these tech hubs like Silicon Valley because that make gives them some level of accreditation that they wouldn't have if they worked from home or something.
There's always a combination of those two things and that's the same case with even working for any company that has a downtown, building. That's like, okay, well, why is that there? Why is,
Mhm.
the Accenture, I want to Accenture. I don't want to badmouth Accenture. I love Accenture, but that they have it, nobody needs to go into the office. You don't need to have 3 floors or 4 floors, you know?
Like Salesforce apps, Flyer, think of Accenture, think LinkedIn, X. So many of them have these giant buildings, and it's interesting when things get bad. What do? Like I saw this at MySpace when I was there. They start cutting those buildings, like all those cool locations. I mean, it was fun to work at the company and have these options all over the country because you go and work anywhere remote, and have a place to stay. But then you're like, but how does this help? I mean, it didn't. I mean, it was cool for the employees outside of that, but
Yeah.
all right,
But there is still a need. Joint application development and working together is an important thing. There is many times where, again, in the IT world, especially when you're building a product or when you're on a team, you need to meet together, meet in
yeah.
person. So I've seen a lot since COVID where we've gone away with being on site for a team. I think you're missing out on some nuances there.
There's a certain level of collaboration that happens in person because there's still a distraction, right? There's still a buffer between you and me as we discuss something where we can't have a conversation while you go and do something because like, oh, hey, let's go get lunch. Let's go over here and talk to so and so, and then that creates that spawn of collaboration and ingenuity that I feel can get left. So I think the idea of people meeting is still good. There's something to that. And then plus, I saw with like in the IT world and working close in business intelligence with the data teams, like them doing sprints or them getting together to like figure out and solve problems where they're breaking off into little teams and doing their own little thing and then coming back together. I saw that have a lot. It was much faster. I noticed when they were doing that in office versus remote.
Yeah.
But no, and last question, are you using AI? And if so, what are you using?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I represent an agentic AI platform, so of
Yeah.
course we're using AI. But I think there's two different, seriously though, with each company, we're using AI in a number of different ways, and and in the roles that we do. But obviously, the company that's building an AI platform uses it effectively. Really, there's three. If you think about what AI is, it's three types. Okay, there's the prompt builder, which is you ask a question, it gives you something. It gives you
Mm-hmm.
either text, image, whatever. You have automation, which is like the Zapiers and the Make and Clays, right? Which is not necessarily AI, but there is AI part of that,
Mm-hmm.
which, it may do something, based upon specific rules and results, but it's not truly analytical. And then there's agentic AI, which is really where it's coming from. And then, and to be honest, I don't know much about MCP yet, but that's another thing that's built on the Anthropic platform. So that said, you know, on the other two businesses, we use a lot of prompt building, a lot of stuff for marketing, collateral, and stuff like that. In the IT staffing firm, my partner is actually building up an AI product, and you can see AI being used a lot to improve recruiting
Mm-hmm.
and the interview process. That's needed. I posted a job 3 days ago for a full stack developer, and I have 500 applicants in 2 days. And, just looking at everybody's resume one at a time, it takes a long time. AI can reduce the time significantly, validating that the people exist, that they're real, you
Mm-hmm.
know, versus just, assuming that they're real. And there is a lot of imposters out there.
Wow.
Yeah. All you got to do is look on LinkedIn, and anytime that a profile doesn't have a picture, I'm thinking it's more than 50% chance that it's not the if they're in technology, it's not a valid account.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you, so one thing with AI, I a lot of it I feel is not essentially artificial intelligence how we think it would be defined because it's just tools that are more efficient at running programs and software and where like true AI would be is essentially you have something and not only you say, hey, I got a problem over here, but it would go and be like, it would research the problem, it would figure out what's going on, and it would provide it or execute all the solutions in that it finds. Where it's like now I have, prompt engineer, right? Essentially where we're at with things. Like I have to give it direction. It gives me feedback. It's wrong. I have to manipulate it to get to a point through different other tools. And it's like I don't feel it's necessarily artificial intelligence yet. I feel it's get there, but it doesn't
right.
seem there.
I
And
think
it, mhm,
I mean, the best example of true artificial intelligence is those chatbots, is a good example of chatbots,
mhm,
where basically you're not giving it direction. It literally needs to respond to whatever the person is telling them, right?
mhm,
And so, in a way, you think of it from that perspective, there's a prompt, but what it does behind the engine to it, right? Which is um, again, using the example of in a resume, I mean, in an interview, okay, you're asking the person a question and you want to validate, you're giving it the things like make sure that they know this, 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 and this. And, if the answer comes back very, very vague, ask it needs to
mhm.
follow up until they can determine, no, this person doesn't know this skill, right? And that's very adaptive.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot more of that now. Obviously, scoring resumes or input is the other thing, and that's not prompt building. That's
Mhm,
really more of validating. Once you set something up and it says, okay, here are the most important things for this job. Tell me who are the best candidates, and the candidates could be based on demographics or based on skills in their resume. And you can do more is actually analyze that person's capabilities.
no, yeah, it's interesting. It's come a long way. and it's going to continue. Where do you kind of see it headed?
I see, well, there's a couple of things. Right now, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of things and things to use. I really do liken it to the beginning of the internet 20, 30 years ago now,
Hmm.
25 years ago, turn of the century.
Yeah.
Um, in that, in the beginning of the 90s, it was the browser wars, right? And
Hmm.
you had Netscape, you had Internet Explorer, you had all
AOL.
these other ones, right? Right. And you literally could buy a book that'll tell you what websites to go to, which of course that doesn't exist anymore. So what you see is it's evolved where it's this vast universe of stuff that needs to be more intuitive. Okay. Well, that's the same case with tools today. But where it's going is that there are going to be the companies that win out. I don't know. Is it going to be Anthropic? Is it going to be XAI? Is it going to be ChatGPT or Google? I don't know the full answer. I do see ones that don't look like they have a really good, examples of it, at least from, the hyperscaler perspective.
Hmm.
But I see that, you know, we'll see a lot more use at the enterprise level, a lot more integration, a lot of things that executives need as far as doing better with data. And to be able to drive through is going to be a lot easier than but we've been saying that now for 30, 40 years. Okay. I remember when we talked about this, you went from mainframe programming to 4GL,
Hmm.
fourth generation language, where it was starting to do that, which is where SQL evolved into. But, AI is going to give you a lot more input and it's going to be much more intuitive.
And more actionable. I remember back in 28 or 2010, it was like MicroStrategy where we could marry data to get reports. And it was like, oh, this is so great. We don't need the same primary keys to have identifiers and do trends. And then like that was going to get better, and then coding got better and everything kept getting better. And now I feel like it's at the point like what you say is like it's just gonna get more streamlined, it's gonna get more easy, and you're gonna ask a question and it's gonna give you not only just the information you ask, but information that can help with decision making.
Right.
Which is
I
cool.
mean, you look at what, not to get political, but you look
Uh-huh.
at what theoretically they're doing, and I don't know for full thing, but with this whole Doge effort about going into the detail, right? If you could basically ingest all this data, you should, the literal models should be able to ingest to see where where are the inefficiencies or
Hmm.
where is the cash flow? Where are the flows of income and revenue and cost? And do a better job there. And then look at it and then try to compare and contrast, year over year.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how many times we talked about, implementing ERP solutions and, how Salesforce is complementary to their ERP solution. And we're always looking for that constituent 360 approach, that holistic view
Hmm.
that everybody's looking at that. And, really, Snowflake, Databricks, data clouds,
Hmm.
those are the answers, but you got to get the data there. And then you also got to look at ancillary systems that may not have a way to uh, get that data. Like a different example is the success of a student, people that graduate. You know that kids are um, more in tune to graduate if they're basically using the library on campus, or the people that are on campus, they're eating at the what do you call it, the
Cafeteria.
area. Yeah. So you're bringing in dining and and traffic and parking data, and even library
Mm.
card usage. All those ancillary things that once you could build a data lake with all this data, then you obviously need something to analyze it, and you have some great data scientists that can either create those algorithms or where AI is going is you don't need to create the algorithms
Yeah.
because they'll be learned. And I think that's really where that's coming into play.
I love that with a data back. I love that that can be done where you can just ask different questions to get these answers or look at different variables. And it's not this, I mean, before it was just spreadsheet after spreadsheet, right? Data dump, put it together, marry it, make sure variables there was no skews, and if there were anomalies, wash out the anomaly. But it's like now you don't have to do all that. You can like really get into the data to make decisions and direction, get information at scale. Yeah, and you're not waiting. You don't have a computer on the side running models, waiting for it to spit it out because it takes
Exactly.
hours to go through all these tables. No,
Exactly.
awesome.
I mean, there's a couple other example use cases. It's like, and you asked me where I'm using it. The one that I'm just starting to look at here is identifying buyer signals and intent patterns
Hmm.
more of, for the different customers. And what are those signals? And obviously in a staffing company, it's either job changes or posting jobs. Okay, that might be true, but do a little bit more analysis. And this is where, do analysis of those companies, which ones are truly growing, and look at year to year, financial analysis or more to that, and look at other components of the data like Glassdoor and what people are saying about it. Also, more social media listening, right?
Hmm.
So there's a lot there that is incredible of where we can go, and it's all about the data.
Hmm. It's always been about the data
Yeah,
and having good data, clean data.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you.